everyone, this is Benedek here, very welcome to my channel. Now in today's episode we will be discussing about how to use an REST API in Unity and C#. Okay, but first let's clarify real quick what an API is, just for those who don't know. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it refers to the backend part of any application, whether it be a mobile app, a desktop app, or simply a website. This is where the large amount of displayed data might come from. For example, if you are logged in to your, let's say, Facebook account and you see your name and profile picture, probably they are stored in a DB, and a backend or an API is serving those datas to the front-end part of the application. And if you are trying to register or log in to any application or site, your data is sent to a backend, a remote server, or an API, and that checks and validates and probably stores the data, and then sends us back a response if it's okay or not. And at the end of login process, the API has the last word, whether or not you are allowed to pass through or not. And today we are going to examine we are going to see how to use a simple weather API. So we will create a simple weather app which will just simply show us the current temperature and probably some forecast values as well. For this we will use not our own server, but we will use a server created by others. This will be a free to use API, and basically that's what we will going to try to achieve. So we will communicate with the server, send a response, send a request to that API, and it will send us in a response the data in a structured format, and we will parse it and display it on the screen in a Unity application. Okay, so let's start coding. Okay, here is the site of the API which we will be using. So it is a free weather API, this OpenMeteo site, and we can use it without any subscription, without any account, no API keys required, so it is ideal for our demonstration. Here we have a documentation. I highly recommend if you are using any API, you should first check for and search for the documentation, because it shows us how to use it. Basically, here, as we can see, we can select cities for which we can request weather data, but we can use the detect GPS position. I will use the GPS position of mine, and it already selected it. Here I can, check these checkboxes, meaning that which kind of information I am curious about. And here we can see here is an API URL. This API URL is basically the thing which let us communicate with it, with this web server, even from an application as well. So let me show you real quick what I am going to. So basically, if I am pasting it in a web browser, and I'm opening this up, it gives us this kind of structured data. It is a JSON format, and actually this is the response of that API. So let's try to read it. Obviously not here, but we have a website called JSONlint. I mean, it is obviously not my website, but it is a very cool tool, I guess, and here I just pasted in the response of that API, and if I click validate JSON, it will say that it is an okay valid JSON. And besides, here I can see the structure of that JSON. So it is a JavaScript object, basically, or a JavaScript object notation response of that API, and it has many values, just like latitude, longitude, and these are floating point numbers. And which is interesting for us is the hourly property of that object, and it is also an object, and it has a time and a temperature 2m named array. The time array contains date times in a string format, and this temperature array contains basically temperature values for that time in a floating point value. And as you can see in the hourly units, the temperature values are in degrees of Celsius, so these are in Celsius. And now we are we did an important step. We understood the response of that API and how, and we find out that we should use these values, so the time and the temperature for that, and we can get those values by simply calling the API. I mean, calling this URL, but of course we don't want to open it manually and check the time and the corresponding temperature value and manually open it or display it, but we would like to call this API from a Unity application. So I have created a simple Unity app or a Unity project. It is currently empty, and I am going to show you how to implement the communication with that server. So I am creating a scripts folder, and inside here I am going to create a C# script. Let it be called data controller or data controller. Let's open it up. Visual Studio. Alright, it is opened in my other monitor, so I am bringing it over. Here I am going to delete those, and the thing is that I had to copy the URL, so the API endpoint, which I am going to call, and here actually I will create a public static string value, and it will be called API URL, and this will contain this URL or the endpoint which I would like to call, and let's start it. We will use the void awake function or method. Here we will start the process. To call an API, we should declare an enumerator function, and it will be called like get request. And okay, all right, it is created, and here we will be using Unity Web Request for this. And here is the thing that it is not currently imported. So I just went to this. I press Alt Enter, and it suggests me to import the Unity Engine networking, and here we can simply use that Unity Web Request, and I will create a GET request, and here we should pass in the API URL from which we want to get data. And here, all right, let me check it real quick. All right, it should be there. Okay, all right, and first we need to call or send that request. So let's yield return web request Unity web request send. Alright, we have sent the request, and we have to handle the response. So let's say web request result. So we are handling the cases which can be the result. It can be Unity web request result connection error. It can be probably a protocol error, and it can be a data processing error. And in those cases, we would like to simply debug log error that something is not okay. Otherwise, we will just parse the data if it's successful. So in case of success, we will simply debug log that it was successful. Data received. Okay, let's say. And here I am going to retrieve the data and assign it to a string variable, so public static string. Let it be weather API response body, and I will initialize it to null. And here I am going to simply assign it a value of the Unity web requests download handlers, not error but the text, which is the API response body. So this is how you can retrieve the API response body. And the API response body is actually this one. So this thing in a text will be the API response body. But how can we, convert it to a C# object? We can create a class here for this data retrieval. We will call it weather data. And this class won't be a mono behavior, but it will be a simple public class, and we don't need these using statements as well, but this should be system serializable. And here the thing is that we have to assign values to that. So we should map here values of this object which we want to use. So I am not curious about the latitude and the longitude and things like that, like the time zone, but now I want to simply display the value of the, let's say, the current time stamp. So I need the hourly object and its values basically. So there will be an hourly object here, a public static, and as it's an object, I will call it hourly data, and I will create it. But the important thing is that it should be called exactly the same as this one, so hourly, and then I need to create that data structure which was inside that object, public class hourly data, and it will be also obviously a system serializable. Alright, and as I have mentioned, this has a time array, which is an array of strings, and a temperature 2m array, which is an array of floating point values. So let's create it. Public string array with the name of time, and a public float array with the name of this temperature 2m should be declared here. So after we declare these data structures, we can use them to
serialize that JSON response, so to interpret this text received here. So we will create another public static variable, but it will be an object of weather data, which we have just created, like this one, and it will be our weather data, obviously. And I will initialize that to null, and here I am going to simply assign it a value of this, but I cannot directly assign it, but we have a class, a built-in class called JSON utility, and it has a method of from JSON, and here I have to pass in which data structure matches this. So I am going to pass in weather data, and here I will have to pass in the string JSON, which will be this one. Alright, as I have passed it in, we are currently so we have retrieved the data, and to test it, let's just simply log the first element, for example. So let's say first element, and it will be the weather data's hourly objects. What's going on? It has an hourly object. Yeah, alright. Hourly's first time value, let's say. So the 0th element. And for this, the temperature will be this one's, but not the time arrays, but the temperature 2m arrays first value, like this. And I don't know why it is red, but I am going to find it out. It says member weather data hourly cannot be accessed with an instance reference, but qualify it with a type instance. Probably I shouldn't use static here, and that will solve it. No. Oh yeah, I was stupid and I put in static here, but I shouldn't, because that won't be a static thing, but it will be an object, and as I have removed that, it is working nicely. Let's check it in the editor. Okay, but to have it working, we have to create an empty game object. Let's say weather manager object, and it will have the data controller, and here it will be logging the received data from here. Of course, it is not, because we haven't called it. So we have to call this here, start coroutine, like that. Let's check it. And here we go. We have received data from the web server, and this is displayed here. Okay. Alright, now we can create some UI elements real quick, just to demonstrate it, if it's working. Okay, here we go. Here we have a panel. Let's create a text value, or just a text field. Okay, here I will just center align it to the top. Alright, and this will be the title, and here we are, creating two other things. here the time goes there, and it will be the so it will be the temperature value. It will be the temperature value, and maybe we should put it like there. Alright, it will be the temperature text, and it will be the time text, and basically we need to modify this a little bit. Just okay, I will create the TM Pro text Mesh Pro UGUI, and it will be the time text, it will be the title text, or sorry, temperature text, and here I am going to assign those values to them. So the time text will hold this value to string. Okay, and I don't know what the problem is, but we will find it out. Yeah, okay, its text field should be assigned that value, and the temperature will hold the other value like this. Let's check it out real quick, and we don't have to specify the toString even. It will work like that. Okay, let's start, and maybe we will see the data coming from the server. Okay, we have a null reference exception. Why? Because I haven't assigned those things here. So I have to assign them in the editor, save and restart. And now, as you can see, it is working. Okay, I hope you liked it, and if so, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Have a nice day. Bye.